According to the Book of Exodus, Mount Sinai is the mountain at which the Ten Commandments were given to Moses by God. In the Book of Deuteronomy, these events are described as having transpired at Mount Horeb. The name Sinai is only used in the Torah by the Jahmist and priestly source, whereas Horeb is only used by the Elohist and Deuteronomist. Sinai and Horeb are generally considered to refer to the same place, although there is a small body of opinion that the two names may refer to different locations. Hebrew Bible texts describe the theophany at Mount Sinai in terms which a minority of scholars, following Charles Beckett, have suggested may literally describe the mountain as a volcano and have led to a search for alternative locations. Etymology. According to the documentary hypothesis, the name Sinai is only used in the Torah by the Jahmist and priestly source, whereas Horeb is only used by the Elohist and Deuteronomist. According to some biblical scholars, Horeb is thought to mean glowing heat, which seems to be a reference to the sun, while Sinai may have derived from the name of Sin, the Sumerian deity of the moon, and thus Sinai and Horeb would be the mountains of the moon and sun, respectively. Regarding the Sumerian Sin deity assumption, William F. Albright, an American biblical scholar, had stated, "There is nothing that requires us to explain him as a modified moon god. It is improbable that the name Sinai is derived from that of the Sumerian Zen, Akkadian Sin, the moon god worshipped at Ur and at Haran." Since there is no indication that the name Sin was ever employed by the Canaanites or the Semitic nomads of Palestine, it is much more likely that the name Sinai is connected with the place name Sin, which belongs to a desert plain in Sinai as well as to a Canaanite city in Syria and perhaps to a city in the northeast delta of Egypt. It has also been recognized that it may somehow be connected with Senna, the name of a kind of bush where Moses is said to have first witnessed the theophany of Yahweh. According to rabbinic tradition, the name Sinai derives from Sinah, meaning hatred, in reference to the other nations hating the Jews out of jealousy, due to the Jews being the ones to receive the word of God. Other names. Classical rabbinic literature mentions the mountain having other names. Har Elohim, meaning the mountain of God, or the mountain of the gods. Har Bashan, meaning the mountain of Bashan. However, Bashan is interpreted in rabbinical literature as here being a corruption of Beshan, meaning with the teeth, and argued to refer to the sustenance of mankind through the virtue of the mountain. Har Gebnunim, meaning the mountain as pure as cheese. Har Horeb, see Mount Horeb. Also, Tersinan is the term that appears in most Islamic sources, including the Quran, and it means the Mount of Sinai. Jabal Musa is another term that appears in Islamic sources, and it means the mountain of Moses. Biblical description. According to the biblical account of the giving of the instructions and teachings of both the written and the oral Torah, Sinai was enveloped in a cloud, it quaked and was filled with smoke, while lightning flashes shot forth, and the roar of thunder mingled with the blasts of a trumpet. The account later adds that fire was seen burning at the summit of the mountain. In the biblical account, the fire and clouds are a direct consequence of the arrival of God upon the mountain. According to the biblical story, Moses departed to the mountain and stayed there for 40 days and nights in order to receive the 10 Commandments, the written and the oral Torah, and he did so twice because he broke the first set of the tablets of stone after returning from the mountain for the first time. The biblical description of God's descent seems to be in conflict with the statement shortly after that God spoke to the Israelites from heaven. While biblical scholars argue that these passages are from different sources, the Mechilta argues that God had lowered the heavens and spread them over Sinai, and the Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer argues that a hole was torn in the heavens, and Sinai was torn away from the earth and the summit pushed through the hole. The heavens could be a metaphor for clouds and the lake of fire could be a metaphor for the lava-filled crater. Several Bible critics have indicated that the smoke and fire reference from the Bible suggests that Mount Sinai was a volcano, despite the absence of ash. Other Bible scholars have suggested that the description fits a storm, especially as the Song of Deborah seems to allude to rain having occurred at the time. The biblical record notes the uniqueness of the event by stating that God spoke directly to the Israelite nation as a whole. Critical views. Some modern biblical scholars explain Mount Sinai as having been a sacred place dedicated to one of the Semitic deities, even before the Israelites encountered it. Others regard the set of laws given on the mountain to have originated in different time periods from one another, with the later ones mainly being the result of natural evolution over the centuries of the earlier ones, rather than all originating from a single moment in time.